Good morning, everybody. This is Michael Bergamo, and you're watching episode number 7 of Updates and Patches. We hope you're doing well. Today's question came to us via Twitter. Somebody asked whether or not disaster recovery was still a relevant thing when you're moving into the cloud. Great topic. We hear this all the time. Thank you for the question to those viewers out there that are following us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We appreciate those. We're answering them as they come in, just in order. But disaster recovery is a thing that's been around for a long, long time. So let's define that really quick. What is disaster recovery? As technology, it is a means and method to get back up and running holistically across the organization. Case in point, if you have a server, you have a computer network, you have an office full of technology, if something bad were to happen to the entire office, how fast could you get back up and running? You see this more often now as things have migrated to the cloud. You see it more often in the internet connection, meaning if you have, let's say, a Comcast, some kind of fiber, some kind of an internet connection coming into your building, because you rely so heavily on the internet to get to now your new infrastructure. Could be your phone system, could be your CRM, it could be your ERP, it could be any number of applications in the cloud. Because you're so reliant on that highway to get back to it, you want to make sure that there's always an available route, and especially an emergency route. So when your least expensive internet connection becomes unavailable, meaning, I don't know, somebody in the parking lot hits the pole and Comcast is out for some unknowable amount of time. They tell you it's going to be between 1 and 8 days before they can get you back up and running. You, the business owner, don't want to be constantly worried about, well, how long is that going to be? Having to call in and check on your support case. And meanwhile, you've got a bunch of people here that aren't doing anything until that's back up and running. So disaster recovery came to kind of the aid of those folks to put some knowable number behind that. By way of a second internet connection. And that second internet connection used to be dedicated. It used to be preposterously expensive. It was just something that it was going to get you going. It was going to keep you going long enough to get the fast, inexpensive one back up and running. Over the years, it turned into complexity into something more simplistic, meaning multiple hardware devices that somehow mashed all the connections together to make you one fast connection. And when one of those fell off, all of a sudden, you could feel it, but you weren't all the way down. It was just a lot slower. Now today, it's typically one single hardware device that has some kind of sensing whether or not that connection is up or down. And then you go into the future of really SD-WAN, which is the big marketing buzzword of determining the kinds of data that you're coming into and leaving that building, prioritizing that over the internet to make sure that the open shortest path is always the one you're taking. But all of those are elements of this thing called disaster recovery, meaning putting your business in the best place possible to limit the amount of time it takes to go from not good to good. That's really all it is. But the question really was, because I've got so much of my infrastructure in the cloud, is disaster recovery still relevant? And it absolutely is. I don't know anybody that has 100% no infrastructure whatsoever. You're going to have a firewall, you're going to have a switch, you're going to have something local to the business to get that connection from A to B, or you're going to have your own cloud. You're going to have something that's completely and totally in your building, that's private all the way through. Maybe you don't rely or trust the public cloud at all, but you want to make very certain that infrastructure is highly redundant, meaning physically it's got lots of different chances before it's completely useless. And then also have that whole thing kind of Xerox copied in your head somewhere else, so that if for whatever reason the building's unavailable, fire, flood, acts of God, whatever it's going to be, you still have an opportunity to get back to work if that becomes unavailable. So going from the old way of disaster recovery, its old requirements, the requirements haven't changed a whole lot. They all start with really two things. How fast do you want to be back up and running? Those are my first questions. And then what state do you want to be in? In the realm of backup, file and folder based backup has been around since the beginning. You remember, you go online, you find the piece of software. You don't go online. Back in those days, it was back in like a DVD. You loaded it on your server where everyone kind of congregated, and then you picked out your folders and your files that were most important. Over time, everyone kind of realized that that's not the way to do it anymore, because everything's most important. Otherwise, why'd you save it? And we want to make very certain that we never have to remember, well, which folder was the one that's getting backed up. That was the light bulb moment in like 2012 when image-based backup came into the market. And files and folders kind of got shuffled off. The price of files and folders backup fell off the cliff. Like, I mean, they're giving it away now. just the smallest, the most amount of terabytes you can imagine, for the lowest dollar amount, whatever it is, but they all lost sight of the goal. That's the thing that kills me with people that shop around for backup is, yeah, everyone will give it away for free, but it's about the state of your data when you need it. How fast can you get back up and running with the data that they have? Meaning, if you call it home, are you going to wait half a day? Are you going to wait half a week? How, can you call it, have them send it to you? Like these are all the questions that always get skirted because of that 0.01 cents per gig thing that everyone's looking at when they're going with Amazon or Google or something like that. Well, the big guys, they're giving the storage away, but they're charging you for the miles per hour you want to call it home. That's a huge gotcha, and it's definitely not the time to find out when you need that data the most. So in terms of disaster recovery, we start off the same way. What level, meaning they call it, it's an industry term, but the recovery point objective, meaning at what point in time do you want to be able to rewind back to? So for most backup applications, they're going to back up once a day. That means you are okay with losing up to 23 hours worth of data. That's not always true. For some data, it may not make a huge bit of difference, but for things like finance applications, for things like CRMs, for things that are constantly getting touched and changed all the time, you really don't want to risk losing an entire day's worth of productivity or worse. For problems that start small and they grow over time, sometimes you have to rewind the clock back way more than just a day. Retention typically goes from day 30 forward. We want to be able to roll that clock back, just like in the old Mac time machine. You want to be able to just shuffle back in time to the place that you remember being happy. Disaster recovery is no different. We want to know what point in time do you want to be able to roll back to, and in most cases, in most organizations that have hardware, you want to be able to go back very quickly. I'm talking in the last 15 seconds, in the last 15 minutes at the most. Disaster recovery should be one of those things that's happening very quickly. Which means it's best done as a service because it has to be tested. It has to be stress tested, not just pull the cord out of the wall and hope everything's okay. No, you want to have documentation as we do. You want to make sure that you have processes and procedures for testing those systems if they're in failover, if they're in disaster recovery. And then everybody's favorite part, which is pushing everything back across the way it used to be when things are okay. When the building is, you can get back into your space. The tide has gone back out. You can come back to work. You want to be able to get back up and running on your good hardware as fast as humanly possible. So in that vein, in that conversation, that's number one. Recovery point objective. We'll remember that. A recovery time objective. This is the one everyone feels first. So after you determine how far back in time you want to go, or how far into the near past you want to jog back to, you want to figure out how fast you can get back to it. This was not always clear in everyone's terms and conditions when you were shopping for a file and folder based backup, especially not towards the end, where everyone was paying $3 or $4 a month for a backup and say, well, I'd love all my data back. And then they come back and say, well, that's going to take some time, and no, you can either pay to go faster or you can dial it back and we'll get to you when we can. None of this equals a good customer experience, and that's really what we pay attention to the most. We know how we want it. As a business, we have needs and wants, and we have people that are standing around if nothing's working. We're sensitive to that, and those are the solutions that we're making every day. Those are the considerations that we would make for our own business as well as yours. So we walk through that, and then from there we delineate the options. So in the cloud, disaster recovery, because backup isn't always included in those services, we look for that first to say, if your CRM, your email, maybe you have a server, maybe you have virtual desktops, maybe you have something in the cloud, we want to make very certain that when we're talking about those services being fast, being highly available, if you need versions of that data, of that desktop, of that server, that box is at least checked so we can say, yes, we do, or no, we may not need versions of our desktops, but we definitely want versions of our server data because that stuff is being accessed all the time by lots of people. We want to make certain of that. We walk through all the options of people that offer that because that's a separate conversation. Some providers don't. Some people say live and die on your virtual desktop. You use it. When you're done with it, you close it and it's gone, and that's good. But when they're having a bad day, when your internet connection's having a bad day, what happens? That's an expectation that we want to set right out of the gate. So walking you through that, and it is all about priorities. So if you say, you know what, I'm good, and I've never had it happen, but if you have somebody that says, I'm good to wait a day to get back up and running, there is an option for that. If you have, the vast majority of folks are saying, I literally don't ever want to worry about being up or down. I just want to get back to work. Those are the solutions that we're going to bring forward. And then, of course, we want to have those tuned and tested all the time. So from disaster recovery, I truly believe there's no point in having a DR solution unless it is tested frequently, because without the knowing that you've got this thing taken care of and you've got data to prove that it's been tested when you didn't need it, that's the measure of a great service. So for all of the things that we have to consider, those are really the main two. And I wanted to bring that up because I think we wouldn't be responsible service providers if we didn't draw attention to the fact that cloud does not equal disaster recovery. Cloud equals applications as a service. The cloud equals no infrastructure, mostly on site. You get out of the hardware game with cloud services, which is great because hardware does fail over time. They don't escape the laws of physics. Over time, those things will fail. In the cloud, that becomes somebody else's obligation and somebody else's opportunity to serve, but it doesn't become yours. But as the proprietor, as the end user of that equipment, we need to draw out the question and just ask it to say, whose responsibility is it when this service stops? What are my service level agreements when I need it to be back up and running? Making sure that all that's right on the front side, and Code Blue Cloud does that all day long. So whether it's a server, whether it's a hosted desktop, whether it's a phone system, all those things are clearly laid out, and they are configurable, they're customizable to you to make sure that you're only ever paying for what you need. That's our number one goal. We want to make sure it's a tailored fit. So if you haven't walked through this exercise yet, if you don't feel comfortable in having even a toe in cloud services because we're not really sure who owns the responsibility, let's talk, let's have a conversation. I can promise you we'll bring some kind of clarity to that and make sure that we're comparing kind of the good, the better, and the best to make sure that you're in the spot that works best for you. But I just wanted to bring that up for you. It was an awesome question. I really do appreciate it. If you have any specific questions about what we've talked about today or anything else in the technology realm, I'm here for you. You can catch me on Twitter. You can catch me on Instagram or Code Blue Technologies Twitter account, at Code Blue Now. I'll link them all up right there. And make sure that you guys have a chance to catch us up anytime. So please, thank you guys so much. Updates and Patches number 7. Thank you guys so much for participating in this. We love you. We'll talk to you again. Thanks.